Good on you. Before we start, it's come to my notice that it's Councillor Turner's birthday today, of all exciting things. Hey. Dear Ken, happy birthday to you. Oh dear. It was a deeply embarrassing moment for you, Councillor Turner. It wasn't much of a party, but a lot of people came. The order of amendments will be addressed in the order that they received. And the next one is the, hello, pay attention, is the Walker and Watson one received yesterday about the Hibiscus Centre. Since that has happened, Councillor Walker has brought to my attention new facts which have come to light. I've been informed that there is an existing contract and already in place for one more year, and I've spoken to the Deputy Mayor who seconded my motion, and she is more than happy to second it to include mine. So we don't need to go through that. Thank you, Councillor and Walker and Watson, for raising this. We will request staff provide advice on equitable and contestable funding options for broader consideration, including the Hibiscus Coast Youth Centre as part of the 10-year budget. Thank you. So there we are. That's the first of the 10-year budget things we've got. The next amendment received was one from Councillor Darby. I believe it has a seconder, or it does not have a seconder?
No, I won't move that until we've heard from Councillor Dalton. She'll move hers first.
Hang on, what we write for that? Are we allowed to change the order in which they receive?
You have a seconder.
Understanding as though I received them in that order, apparently they can be altered by the fact that they haven't actually been seconded yet, either of them. So whoever's going to be first to become second will come second, and who second will come first. Yep. Dalton and Bartley. Okay, thank you for that. Now this one's largely the same as the other one, so I hope we don't have to have every speech again. Is it possible that we could do this a little bit quicker? Okay.
Sorry.
Councillor Dalton, would you like to address us?
Point of order before we start.
Please.
Are we going to have an opportunity to ask questions of staff in regard to this? Because I have some, yes, as we did with the last one.
Absolutely, we are.
Thank you.
I'm not shortening that, but I would be.
No, sorry,
I think most of us have heard the impassioned speeches from everybody at least once. So we'll try and deal with this in a modified and slightly sharper version. Is that all right, Councillor Dalton? You don't object to that, I'm sure.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Staff questions will be available. So I'll get you to address us, and then I'll ask the staff to come and I'll open it for questions. Are you happy with that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. And you, everyone will note that it's very similar to Councillor Foley, so I won't need my full time to speak. The adjustment that has been made in this one is to, in listening, to increase the rates to 7.7, not quite going as high as I know Councillor Ferry, and actually I'd support higher rates as well, but 7.7. It is reducing the cuts down to 69.8. So the Mayor's latest proposal has $83 million in cuts. This amendment has 69.8 in cuts. The rates increase is the same as the Mayor's proposal, 7.7 or 11%, mitigated to 7.7. Reducing the debt to 120 and the one-off 20 million for storm-related costs, which is higher than the Mayor's proposed debt, which is 80 million and 20 million. This is also restoring all of the local board funding. It means the chief executive does not need to find another $5 million. It is reducing the savings for Tātaki Auckland from 17.5 to 15.5. And that is to cover the Western Initiative to be included, as it isn't included at the moment. The Southern Initiative is. That's probably the guts of it. Everything else is pretty much the same as Councillor Foley's. The intention, once again, is that we retain our airport shares and we present to you a balanced budget that enables the airport shares from Manukau City Council and Auckland to be retained for discussion into the long-term plan, where we can have a fuller discussion with more information so we can make a fully informed decision. So I'll leave it there. Thanks, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dalton. I'm going to ask for questions if anyone's... Just ask, please restrict your questions to questions about the difference. Most of the questions, they are very similar. So if we're talking about questions about the main bit, try and your best to limit these to the changes that Councillor Dalton has offered. I'm sure Councillor Dalton doesn't mind that either, is that right? Thank you. Okay, so I have a question from Councillor Ferry.
And sorry, this is a question for finance staff. So I'll give them a moment to get to the table. I did pre-warn Mr Gudsall that I would ask this if I had the opportunity.
I think they're coming to the stage.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to feel bad about this if it's a short answer. In regard to the rates portion, so the amendment is an average general rates increase of 11%. So what does that mean in terms of the conversation we had about the previous amendment in regard to what was being talked about as requiring 15% next year? So I'd just like to understand the same sort of figures, but for this. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, through the chair. Yes, so this amendment looks to 11% in 23-24 as a general rates increase, which would mean a 7.7% total rates increase average for residential ratepayers. For the following year, the first year of the LTP, all things being equal, as Peter went through earlier, that would be 12.1% as a general rates increase, and then with the long-term differential strategy starting again, the two targeted rates coming back in, that would mean 14.1% for residential ratepayers and 12.8% for business ratepayers.
So just to clarify, probably I put my question a little bit around the wrong way, but just to clarify, so that's the impact of 140 million of debt in the next portion, rather than covering the difference through continuing to do a higher rates increase. Is that correct? Like it's the debt, it's using that much debt that creates that issue. Is that correct?
It's using the debt to cover the gap for 23-24. That gap will remain the following year, and as Peter said earlier, the assumption is that in the following year, the starting point is that rates will cover that gap.
Okay.
And that gap will rise a bit by the level of debt.
And so turning to the original of 100, what do those figures look like for 100 million in terms of the starting point for rates for next year, which is the mayoral proposal? The
mayoral proposal with the 100 million and partial sale of airport shares. So that for the first year of the LTP, again, is 10.4% general rates, which would increase to 12.6% for residential total rates and 11.2% for business total rates.
Okay, thank you very much for that context. That's really helpful for me. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Councillor Ferry. At this stage, there are no further questions. I think I'm sorry. Councillor Filipaina.
Thank you, Your Worship. This may be a question for you initially, Your Worship, because is the Western Initiative in your proposal, your fourth one, I think, or third one? I got confused. Latest one, yeah. Is the Western Initiative in there?
It is.
Okay, thank you. And this amendment, just to you, Peter, that this amendment here has gone through the budget calculator and budget staff?
Yes, it has, and it meets the balanced test.
Yep, totally agree. Thank you.
Councillor Foley, please.
Kia ora, thank you. So we've got a $20 million reduction in the debt. Does that now meet the requirement or the threshold that you said the previous amendment didn't quite meet? Is this now more affordable or affordable, implementable, sustainable, achievable, and all the other balls?
Thank you for the question. Very well put. The last one met the threshold because the threshold that we had talked about as the extreme element of debt that could be used was 140 plus the 20 of storm-related one-off. This is within that boundary. It's at 140.
Kia ora, thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
I think in the absence of anything, we can move to go for this one. I will point out once again that it is very similar to the last one and it still has roughly $1 billion more debt than the Merrill proposal, or the current Merrill proposal. So I no doubt Councillor Filipaina will request.
Yes, I do, Your Worship. So before I put up my PowerPoint, because I actually done one, before I do that, I just wanted to sort of say with the whakaaro situation now, I am so again surprised around how the comments that I heard in the last debate, how confusing they were. And the reason I say that, Your Worship, is because we had a situation where the debt, not the debt level, but the situation where the rates were lower than your proposal, but people were still talking about this is no good for our community who have fixed incomes and, you know, it's raising their rates. Well, that is what your Merrill proposal is doing now. And so I was confused with some of the comments I heard in the last debate. So I want to try and clear those up. This is the same as your proposal, your latest proposal. This is the same. The only difference is the airport shares. That's the only difference. So I will go to my PowerPoint and there's only one page. Look at that. That is so cool. Why is it cool? Because if you have a look at 23rd of February 2023, please go on to the airport website. Go on there. First half 23 results. Auckland Airport returns to profitability as travel continues to recover. What I will have a look at, just to mention that in that bulk of the report, Auckland Airport returns and the word profitability as it continues to recover. That's on the 23rd of February. If you go to the next one, 17th of March, building the gateway New Zealand needs, multi-billion-dollar investment in future of travel at Auckland Airport. I just want to take some of the comments that are on that particular page. Auckland Airport Board today reaffirmed its commitment to the integration of domestic and international travel, approval for the project to move into the final stages of design as part of the construction program to take place over the next 5 to 6 years. Second comment, I just want to sort of point out to everybody around there, and this is from the CEO, Kerry Huri-Hanganui, and this is all about building the gateway Auckland and New Zealand need. If we go to the next one, the 27th of April, onwards and upwards, long-haul flights taking off from Auckland Airport. Comments in that particular one is first time since the pandemic, long-haul flights between Auckland and North America are set to exceed 2019 levels with a planned 11% increase. Also, Kiwis hopping away in droves during Easter school holidays at Auckland Airport. The last one, Auckland Airport, FY 23 to 27, price changes. That particular one, again, I'm going to quote the CEO. If you have a look at that particular release, and it's the 8th of June, which is yesterday. And what she said is here, that's the CEO, said the ongoing recovery in aviation is strong, as is the need to invest in critical aviation infrastructure for the future. So, colleagues around this table, that's the only difference. The difference is that looking at just those 4 headlines on their website, we will end up getting more profits that are going to come through. But no, look, what we're looking at doing, if this doesn't go through, what we're looking at doing is that, no, we're going to cut back all these profits that we end up having. So for me, and Your Worship, I ended up getting an email, and for me, I'm glad I got the email. And what that email said to me was, look, those airport shares are the most valuable asset Auckland City has, Auckland Council. None should be sold. All 3 Western boards have a majority for no sales of the airport shares at all. So look, that's what's happened. I want to sort of mention, and I think I've got about 2 minutes, I think, approximately. 30 seconds, there you go. 12 local boards, they oppose selling airport shares. And, 12. If we recall, there was a vote that had around the local government New Zealand and membership of that. How many boards there ended up saying we do not want to leave local government New Zealand? I think it was about 20. My last comment is about local boards. And I want to acknowledge the 2 local boards in the Manukau ward, because they have been ardent supporters of the position that myself and Councillor Foley have had around this airport shares, and that is not going to change in this particular. So I'm going to listen to the local boards. Nobody else, the people know who didn't listen to them when we got out of local government New Zealand, but I am going to listen to the local boards. So look, thank you, and I look forward to this going through. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any further debate on this? We've had a fair stretch of it. Righto. I've got quite a few suddenly. Where they've suddenly emerged from. Foley, Henderson, Walker, Newman, Ferry. Not Lee, Ferry. Right, I've got Foley, Henderson, Leone, Newman, Lee and Ferry. Does that cover the pack? Walker? Okay, now, bearing in mind that this is very similar than the other one, can we please attempt to introduce new stuff rather than relitigate long speeches? Thank you, and the Deputy Mayor. Foley first.
Kia ora, thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to speak in support of this amendment. That should be no surprise. In the last amendment, we heard many around this table saying that their main concern was that the debt was at 140 million. Their main concern was that we weren't putting up rates high enough in order to get that revenue, ongoing revenue, and that people did not support having more cuts. Well, here is an amendment where the cuts are reduced even further, returning more money to West Auckland and to South Auckland through TSI and TWI, restoring all of the local board funding. It brings our debt down by another 20 million. We've heard from our staff that it is achievable and everything else. And it includes an increase in the rates to match the rates that the Mayor proposes in his latest proposal. So for those people who raised those concerns in the last round, I hope that this allays your fears. I hope that this helps you to realise we can balance a budget and we can keep the most important and highest revenue earning asset that we currently hold. This is a defining moment in time for all of us, a defining moment in history. Where will you stand on the side of history? Will you protect the borders of the city? Will you protect our greatest asset? Will you strive to make sure that we have a more strategic approach in the future at looking at this asset and others, or will you simply cast it away without much more thought? I won't say what I was going to say. Kia ora, Your Worship, and I hope that this brings people around to voting for this amendment. Kia ora.
Thank you for that, Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. I don't have too much more to add. I think I covered this topic fairly comprehensively in my previous yarns. Just a couple of things. Look, opening comments about the Western Initiative, it was already in the proposal. So I think that's actually out of order to be saying those kinds of things. Look, in my view, debt at 100 million is already high. It's too high, almost. Goodness. So just so I can, there's people out there scared about the Western Initiative because previous comments that are watching this, I just want to let them know that I am going to be fighting for Westie homes and communities that are in huge danger from floods. Danger before, danger now. I will fight for a pool in Massey. I always have and I always will while I'm here. I will fight for infrastructure to meet housing growth for suburban Auckland. That's not just West Auckland. That's suburban Auckland that has taken on all the housing and gets bugger all. I will be fighting for that infrastructure. For that infrastructure, that needs debt. So for West Aucklanders that are concerned about having one pool for 250,000 people, I'm here fighting for that. Thank you.
Thank you for that impassioned speech. I'll join you in there. Councillor Leone, I believe. Councillor Newman, please.
This pulls a short-term lever on the debt, and I am not going to compromise the need to fully fund depreciation and the renewal of our assets. This is about a $20 million variation from the debate that we had this morning. But, you know, new information. Some years ago, I visited the Ronald Reagan Library in Los Angeles. And I want to just read, people are quoting lines. I'm going to give you one line from his inaugural address. You and I, as individuals, can, by borrowing, live beyond our means, but only for a limited period of time. Now, he didn't actually balance the budget. That had to come later. And we will do the same. But we will have to scour out costs for the unfunded mandate, that is the CRL contract, which doesn't have a fixed price. We will have to fund depreciation, and we have to fund storm recovery in West Auckland. And the interesting thing about, I love the library there, and the speech was pertinent, and Councillor Dalton, thank you for joining me on that trip. Isn't that unusual? We were both there, but we're not here on this issue. Not here on this issue. The reality is that when you use debt, you have to pay for it. And it will be paid for by a general rate increase, which is unacceptable to me, unacceptable at 11%, 12% the following year. If we continue with the differential move, 14% on residential rates. 2 nights ago, Gladys Bonner, when I was on her doorstep in my ward, saying, no way, don't do that. I'm not going to do that because fundamentally this amendment doesn't pay for itself. This amendment just requires the next budget round to start to pay down the cost, and it will be through an exponentially higher rate increase, and it will be to the detriment of the renewal of our assets. Thank you, Councillor Dalton, for joining me that day, but I'll finish once again with what he said. You and I, as individuals, can, by borrowing, live beyond our means, but only for a limited period of time. Good trip, great advice.
Thank you very much for that interesting little vignette. Councillor Lee.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I take on board your instruction that we shouldn't repeat arguments that have already been rehearsed. So I do want to place on record my concern that the amendment by Councillor Foley had actually a lower rates increase than your own, sir, and yet there were members around the table trumpeting about the ratepayer and about not putting up rates and how it wasn't fair, and they're quite willing, evidently, to support a higher rates increase than Councillor Foley's. I don't think that's logical, nor do I think it's particularly fair. Now, the new information I'd like to table regards Auckland International Airport and concern in the marketplace that the 15 million square metres of land, which is rateable in the Auckland International Airport holding, obviously not the airport itself, but the vast industrial commercial estate, is significantly undervalued before this major transaction is about to take place. The average land value in the area generally is between $2,000 to $3,000 per square metre of industrial land, and the Auckland International Airport, I'm told, is around about $846 per square metre. Now, I don't know how true this is, but it is a matter of concern. But what I do know is that the Auckland International Airport executives and a squadron of lawyers turned up at the council demanding that their rates, the council's valuation, be decreased. And the council, I am told, complied, and so it backed off on its valuation. So these are issues, I think, that need to be investigated before we get into any airport sale, which is why
I don't think you're talking about the changes here, you're talking about...
Councillor Dalton's amendment still gives that good advice. So let's consider all these issues starting in 3 weeks' time with the long-term plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ferry, please.
Thank you. I've been approaching today with very much an open mind. I would note that the quote from Ronald Reagan was very problematic for a number of reasons I won't go into, but I did just want to note that. I'm glad you had a really good time. Let's leave it there. I've seen Ho Chi Minh's body lying in his mausoleum, but I'm not going to go on about it. So, what I did want to say is that I wanted to support this because I don't want to sell the airport shares. However, if I cannot get enough people to support an amendment for 12.7% this year, there is no way we are going to get support around the table next year for the kind of rates increase that we would need as a result of passing this amendment. And that will mean that my colleagues who like cuts will put all of the cuts that we saved this year back on the table again and more. And I'm afraid I cannot support that. So I will not be supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ferry. Councillor Walker.
Sure. I'll just start off with being entirely mystified about these references to next year, which is the long-term plan. And the very, very clear signals that the Mayor has put, and any number of councillors around this table have put, that it will be a significantly different budget. And I have every confidence in that. Every confidence in that, if there is the will around this chamber. The suggestion that I've put forward, that John Crawford put forward, that goes to the diversified fund, which we do have the opportunity to have, is that you would pay down your debt. You would be able to make better provision for depreciation. you would have a better handle on rates. You would actually solve all of those problems because we have an existing rock-solid investment, but we can diversify that investment, and we should. And John Crawford said, it's not desirable to have all your eggs in one basket. So that is what we're giving up, because my belief is as soon as we have sunk this investment and put it into debt, we will not be revisiting that to create a divestment fund of the stature that we might otherwise have. And I would remind councillors that one of the particularly unique things about this council is the substantial sum of money that we have ordinarily had from the ports of Auckland and the airport that has contributed hugely to the success of this city. And what we are doing progressively is selling off the silver that is generating a significant return, and we could be getting a significantly better return than what we are now. These are the structural decisions that we are making now that should be being made in the long-term plan, and we are considerably under-informed around any of this. And I doubt that anybody would disagree around that. If you think we're adequately informed, well, then I think you're very under-informed. And if I quote from the Chief Executive of Auckland Airport, travel is back and the recovery is taking place more quickly than anyone expected. Now is the time for investment in Auckland Airport if we are to deliver the resilience and customer experience travellers want and the gateway New Zealand needs for the future. End of quote. Now that is also Auckland's gateway. It is also woven inextricably with our future. As Councillor Lee mentioned, you've got 1,500 hectares, I think, of commercial space there that we rate, and I have no doubt that we could extract a far better return from an even more successful Auckland Airport. So what is being suggested in this amendment, yet again, is that we consider the sell down of the shareholding in the long-term plan, which is the most prudent thing that we could be doing. And if we had contestable advice to that effect, I'm sure that we would all be voting that way, but we have an absence of that advice, regretfully. So I will be voting for this amendment also.
Thank you for that. Deputy Mayor Simpson, please.
Thanks, Your Worship. Look, I have to look at this amendment against yours. So again, thank you, Councillor Dalton, for putting one up. You've kept the rates the same, but it's about selling the airport shares and debt. And at the end of the day, the decision I have to make is one of the two pays down $1 billion worth of debt and doesn't increase it by an extra 20 million, but yours doesn't pay back $1 billion worth of debt and asks us to borrow more. So quite simply, if that's my choice, I'm going for paying down debt and having less debt. Paying down $1 billion worth of debt and getting less debt.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Watson, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I'll try and hold to your request for new information. So it'll be a fairly short but typically insightful observation, I hope. And that really goes to the first recommendation put up by Councillor Dalton in respect of not selling the shares off at this moment. And the new information, Mr Mayor, really looks at the consequences of holding on to this asset in particular, not assets generally, but this asset in particular. And inspired by some of the PowerPoint presentations, I looked at the shareholding of the legacy councils, which at one point there amounted to 47.4%. Now, if those legacy councils like Auckland and Manukau had hung on to their investments, that investment would now be
over 6 billion, 6.143 billion that would be available to this council. And to put that into perspective, 6.143 billion now would enable us to pay off more than half our debt. That's the sort of contribution you can leave to legacy, to your successors, with prudent choices at times like that. To put it in another context, that 6.143 billion would enable the council to pay its contribution to 2 city rail link projects. Can you imagine that? What a legacy that is. 2 city rail link projects and fully fund Penlink. I want to have a bit of local investment in this. That's the scale of investment that wise forefathers initially left us, which we have squandered to date, and which we now proceed virtually to give away altogether. And what's the contribution, the difference between the 2 city rail link projects and the Penlink project? What is our legacy? It's $1 billion into the debt ether that we all know will just build up again, and we'll be back at the start of the race. The ultimate snakes and ladders. That's my additional comment, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much for that additional comment. Councillor Hills.
Thank you. Just want to follow up from Councillor Ferry, and I think people are, well, I don't know, but it feels like we're missing the 2 different issues. There's one, the debt headroom, and it's because we need it for the City Rail Link and the storm damage, etc., etc., and that's fine. But we've also discussed this as a group many, many times. If we wanted to save the shares, or we wanted to do something different, we'd have to have a far greater rates rise, and we checked, and we didn't have those numbers. We pushed and pushed and pushed you, Mayor, and thank you for bringing back a whole lot of the cuts that Auckland has asked us to do, and you have borrowed a bit more. We also pushed you on that, borrowing a bit more this year. But the main issue is the continual increase in the borrowing to fill the operational gap. It makes it so bad next year. It'll already be hard, but it will make it so bad next year that the austerity that is being pushed this time by some elected members will be far worse, because I know that councillors aren't going to vote for a 14% or more rates rise. They might not even vote for a 7.7. You're talking about deep cuts, and I'm sorry, some of the debate around here has focused on we're just going to find more savings. We're just going to end things that we do around here. Jim has said to us through the last 4 years of deep cuts through COVID and other things, there isn't much left. That's why it's dipping into the horrible things, in my opinion, that climate, which we brought back, environment, which we brought back, grants, culture, events, CABs. I can list them all again, but I won't. Those things will be on the table and more if we don't fill the gap some other way than just that short-term, borrowing for short-term use. And it seems to be like an ideological argument, but we're just filling the gap. And last time we got told there'd be a gap of 90 to 150, and look what we're at, 325. We didn't fill it properly last year, and then if we do this again, I think I'm really worried that and I've been on the side of votes that I have lost this term, I'll say it again, on cuts to things that I didn't agree with. So I believe that if we don't fix and fill the gap properly, we will then have no choice but to put up the rates to 14%, which clearly is not going to happen around this table, especially as inflation drops down, or severe cuts, which I won't support, but I will be part of that problem if we don't do something about it now. So, you know, there have been a few times in the last 6 or 7 years that a lot of people have voted for a budget and voted down the rates, some councillors many times, and that was when you're looking at a 3.5% rate increase. Andy and I were approached by one councillor saying, we can save everything as long as you guys get 11 votes for the rates. My question to that councillor who's spoken today was, will you be one of those 11? That was on the 6.7 or... And they said, no, as long as there's 11 of you to cover the rates, that will be fine. And so I guess that's my issue, is that I'm really worried if we don't make a structural change today, then we're just leaving our city, our community organisations, our environment, our climate, our staff to the wolves again, because I don't believe that people will make those harder decisions next year.
Thank you, Councillor Hills. Councillor Bartley, the seconder, I believe.
Yep. As a seconder, I am speaking in support of this amendment put up by Councillor Dalton. I'm not going to speak too long because I did my bit earlier. But I also want to acknowledge Councillor Foley and Councillor Filipaina for trying to put up the first motion, because they're trying to fight hard to save the shares. And Manukau City Council, Auckland City Council, they still held on to their shares. If this all goes through and you get your partial sale of the shares, I understand that that will go into contribute to some kind of fund, which all of Auckland will be able to benefit from. So again, other parts of Auckland that benefited from the sale of their own shares will get the benefit of Manukau and Auckland, but specifically Manukau selling, having their shares sold out. So it doesn't really sound very equitable or fair to me. Anyway, the other difference that this amendment brings is that it saves the cuts without selling the shares. So yes, a last minute plea to please consider what is being sold in order to plug this little, well, not little, this gap, but in comparison to the 2.2 billion that's on the table. So yeah, it's keeping to your rates, it's keeping to, well, it's bringing the debt down by 20 million to a more acceptable level, which people have voiced concern about. And it's also putting a little bit more back into the what's proposed to be cut. So also want to pick up on Councillor Henderson. Absolutely no disrespect was meant to you regarding the West Auckland being mentioned there, because we all know you, yeah, you live and die for your area. So acknowledging that, and what Councillor Turner does too. But yeah, as a seconder, no disrespect was meant. And that's all I have to say. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Baker, and I think we might then go to moving it.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. So I think we're just getting a little bit lost too. I mean, for me, it's certainly my opposition to the last amendment and to this one. It's not about the numbers, it's about the philosophy of using debt to pay down our operational expenses. And we've moved away from PowerPoints into quotes and crystal ball gazing and sort of in terms of the value of the shares. But I just, if we want to just, quote some things in the media, it's the Herald article this morning that talks about the stoush between Air New Zealand and Qantas, and where they warn that the increases could close the door on New Zealand and that travel will become unaffordable. And so that will obviously potentially, if we're crystal ball gazing and not really knowing what's coming, have an effect. But and I'm also intrigued that we spend a lot of time and heard a lot of comments how we need to be looking ahead and creating strategies and for the future, yet we don't want to look at what the potential rates increase is for a discussion we're going to start in about 2 weeks for next year. And so I don't accept that we should be ignoring what is coming in a bow wave or a hangover, however you want to put it, in terms of the decisions we make today. So I will be opposing this and any amendment that requires us to use more debt than the Mayor's proposal.
Okay, thank you for that. We're about to move towards this. I do want to just point out a couple of things there. The difference between this and my one is not just about the rates this year, it's about the rates next year, because my one will propose $1 billion reduction in debt. And whilst everyone's quoting very famous people, Chairman Mao said that the 1,000-mile march to reduce debt starts with the first step. And it's about time we took the first step in reducing debt. And the impact on next year by doing nothing about it, it will make it even harder. And so in the very last thing, just remind us from the Kantar survey that 52% wanted to sell some of the shares. With that in mind, I'm sure Councillor Filipaina will call for a, whatever it is he gets,
Division.
a division.
Thank you so much, Your Worship.
The Filipaina division call, which we can rely upon. And I will call on my excellent helper, Sandra with an O, to lead us into this.
Thank you. Councillors, you're voting on Councillor Dalton's amendment. Councillor Baker.
No.
Councillor Bartley.
For.
Councillor Dalton.
For.
Councillor Darby.
Against.
Councillor Ferry.
Against.
Councillor Filipaina.
Aye.
Councillor Fletcher.
Against.
Councillor Foley.
For.
Councillor Henderson.
No.
Councillor Hills.
Against.
Councillor Lee.
For.
Councillor Leone.
For.
Councillor Newman.
Against.
Councillor Sayers.
Against.
Deputy Mayor Simpson.
Against.
Councillor Stewart. Councillor Turner.
Against.
Councillor Walker.
Yes.
Councillor Watson.
For.
Councillor Williamson.
No.
Mayor Brown.
No.
So that will be lost 8 votes to 13.
Okay, we'll just have a 7-minute break till 2 o'clock, just so that people can attend the public health items.
Can I just make a note for early departure before we do that, that I will need to leave at 5. Hopefully we're done by 5. But it is one of my children's birthdays and I need to be home for his dinner. So I'll be leaving at 5. Thank you.
I wish with all my heart that I can meet your requirements for an early departure, or even any form of departure today would be good.